Well, due to travel, I'm not quite as sophisticated in this recording, but I try to do 5 minutes, 5 days a week. And so I would like to talk to you more about the call of God on our lives. You know, all I can do is what I know to do based on the Word of God. I will serve Him and obey Him. Uh, I will trust Him to show me whatever He wants me to do, and I will just continue doing what God has called me to do. Uh, I like um, I like First Corinthians chapter 9 when we talk about the call. Paul said in First Corinthians 9:16, "For though I preach the gospel, I have nothing to glory of, for necessity is laid upon me. Yea, woe is me if I preach not the gospel." I really want you to consider that. When I think about the call, this verse really comes to mind. Paul felt that necessity was laid on him. Paul felt like if he didn't preach, woe is unto me. In other words, he had to preach. He felt like he had to do it. I don't know what God does. I can't explain it, but I tell you, I would believe that most men that feel like God called them to the ministry would say to you something happened and put a powerful desire in them, a hunger, a need, maybe something they didn't even want to do. I know that when God was calling me to Peru, I was afraid to come to Peru because it was against everything I'd ever done. It was giving up what I knew. It was going where I didn't know. I already knew I was no good in languages, and my wife didn't want to go. And so, but more and more every day until I surrendered, I felt the woe, the necessity. I felt like God was really pushing me to do it. And so I would tell you in a lot of ways, that's a good way to describe the call. And not trying to be spooky, but something will happen and you'll be like, oh, I just feel like this is something I have to do. Paul continues in First Corinthians 9:17. He says this, "For if I do this thing willingly, I have a reward." If I do this thing willingly, in the verse, it's going to be obvious that either way, he was going to be doing it because basically the Lord was pushing him to do it. He was afraid not to do it. There was a weight put on him to do it. He said, but if I do it willingly, I'll get a reward. And if I do it against my will, well, a dispensation of the gospel is committed unto me. Even if I do it against my will, I need to know God gave me a job to do with my life. That's what makes the call so different. It's not like a Sunday school teacher. It's not like somebody who disciples people. It's not like a regular church member. Laymen like to try to act like, well, you're just like me, except you get paid to do it. But Paul said there was a weight put on me that I couldn't escape from. If I did try to escape it, I was afraid of what might happen to me. And he said, if I did it right, I'd get a reward. And if I didn't, then it would be a totally different situation. I don't know how you see that, but to me, it's very obvious, very clear that Paul felt something special. Notice what we have. Paul loves what he does, and he said in verse 15 he wasn't doing it to get the money. He said in 1 Corinthians 9:15, but I have used none of these things, neither have I written these things that it should be done unto me, for it were better for me to die than that any man should make my glorying void. But what happens in 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verses 1 through 14, is the Apostle Paul explains that God expects the man of God to be paid by those he preaches to. That a man who preaches the gospel, it's ordained of God that that man live of the gospel. Paul said, I didn't do that. I didn't do it. I wanted to preach the gospel. I didn't do it. I didn't take and ask you to pay me anything because, to be honest, I wanted to be able to glory and say I did it just because I want to. I had a guy tell me one time that people only serve God for the money, that people in the ministry only serve God for the money. You take away their money, they'll all quit. Not Paul. Paul said, I don't even want your money. Not Paul. Paul said, if I do it willingly, I get a reward. And if I do it and I don't do it willingly, then I still got the weight on me. I still got the job to do. And so I want to challenge you to consider this call of God on your life. Paul didn't preach to get the praise of men or to magnify himself. Paul said a necessity was laid on him. Paul felt constrained, forced, pressured, obligated. Paul felt like it would be torture not to preach. Sounds a lot like a call to me. Paul said if he didn't preach, it was a woe to him, a displeasure, a hardship, distress. He felt even doomed if he didn't preach. Two thoughts come to mind. Paul does what he thought was a good doesn't do what he thought was a good career choice. He felt called by God, compelled by God, and sent by God. My second thought is if you feel that way, you'll be able to stay on the mission field till God calls you off. There's too much flippant, give it a shot, see if you like it attitude, and it hurts the churches, it hurts the nationals, it hurts you, and it hurts your family. I'd love to talk to you some more about the call if you'll check in again tomorrow.